There we go.
Get properly lit here. It's very important.
This is an excellent record.
I'm glad you like it. I was wondering whether this show was going to be, because as I saw some comments like when I did post about it or whatever, and I was wondering whether it was going to be one of those. I was going to have to spend time like selling it to you or selling it to people, or whether we could talk about it in a different kind of way. So it's kind of cool.
Just real quick, I guess my hip hop analysis and contextualization for it. What's up,
Hey,
bro?
what's up?
My contextualization for it was that their writing style.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one lead singer, or do they all kind of like?
They're all three. They all have their own songs. Yeah.
It felt that way. I was about to say, I'm hearing everybody go on solo missions, a la the Beatles, with everybody else doing backup for them, but doing it.
All three of them are accomplished solo artists in their own right, and are coming together for a. So it's a Wu-Tang-ish kind of thing.
Okay,
in that way.
So there's something very Biggie Smalls about the writing, but
okay, tell me about that.
So when they're saying stuff like, "You think you're a good person because you didn't punch me in the stomach."
Yeah, exactly. That's a song. That song's called Revolution Zero, man. I think that's one of the things I love so much about this record, and one of my notes about it is that there's such a contrast in so much of this of the music between the tone of their voices, which sound, if you're not paying attention to what they're saying, sound very sweet and very quiet in most parts. I mean, and there's some screaming too, but like quiet and calm and restrained. But if you listen to what they're saying, like I want you to tell me who broke your nose so I can go to their house and punch their teeth, kick their teeth in. Like it's some savage. There's some savagery there.
That's what I mean. Is it's very Biggie Smalls like. It's like, well, if you're actually people get lost in Biggie's voice and in his wordplay and his humor, and sometimes they miss just how wicked he was on the mic. Like he would say, like he to me is like was the king of saying slick shit on big records that like people weren't catching. It's like he talked a lot of big shit, but it wasn't what you would call radio friendly. Like let's go to Big Papa for instance, where he's like lyrical dishes for your bushes. I'm like,
I remember the first time, like, I mean, I'd heard that song 50 times before I registered that he said that. I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Like, or on like Hypnotized when he's like, I know you sick of this lame brand nigga with sweet girl. Girls say he's sweet like licorice. So get with this. It's easy. Girlfriend, call me around 10. Come through, have sex on rugs that's Persian. Come up to your job, hit you while you're working. It's like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that talk on here. And so I was impressed with the songwriting. Now, tell me about all three of these ladies separately, because they sound wonderful together on this album. Yeah. And I was going to ask you, is this their best project together as well?
All right. So some context here. Hi, guys. Welcome. I mean, if you're here, I assume you know we're talking about Boygenius's album. It's called The Record. That was released in March. This is Phoebe Bridgers, who is the most famous of the three as a solo artist. Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker. All three of whom are accomplished solo artists in their own right. Phoebe Bridgers is probably the most famous of the three. Outside of indie circles, but all three of them are accomplished songwriters by themselves. This is to answer one of your questions, this is their first project where they all are together. First, like full length album anyway, where they're all together. They've done songs before, but I mean that kind of thing. But this is their first full length one. And to be quite honest, I didn't know very much about them at all. Before this year, like this is new to me too. My friend Emily, if you're there, hi Emily, sent me the song "Emily, I'm Sorry." Like I don't know, because they released 4 songs as an EP, kind of ahead of, like, as a lead into this album, and then they released the whole album. The EP thing came out last December, January, kind of, and that was $20, which is the second song. True Blue. I forget what other two. Emily, I'm sorry, and there was a fourth one. Might have been Cool About It, but I don't remember. There were definitely four though, and um, so she sent me that song, partly as a joke because it has her name in it, but she made me a playlist of like, because she was not one of my former students, but she was a student um, that kind of adopted me as a teacher, and she's like 25, 26 now probably, and so she is one of my like, if you hear new shit that you think I'd like, send it over, right? So this Emily, I'm sorry, was one of those first songs. I was like, oh, this is really good. Like when you see the name Boy Genius, this is not the kind of music you would necessarily think would be coming out. Dude, thank you so much. We appreciate you. I mean, if you have any questions, you let us know too. Um, so anyway, we have so she sent me that song. I did a reaction to that one in March or April. It's been a while now,
Hmm.
or maybe even earlier than that. And
Thanks,
so
Boog.
that was my journey with it. When the album was released in March, I wrote the review of it on the Mirror Music Medium page um, in April, I think, around my birthday, and it's I wrote in that one that this might be the album of the year. It's definitely the best one I'd heard in the sense of in the non hip hop sphere anyway. Um, at that point in the year, right? And there, I've not heard anything between now and then to displace it. So um,
That was.
I think very, very, very well done.
I was about to say my next question was that is it still album of the year for you?
It is, yeah. In the non hip hop space for sure. Like
I,
it's
I would think even in the hip hop space, the only record that I've heard from beginning to end is probably better is Magic 3 by Nas.
and that's the only other one that I would put in that kind of
Yeah.
in that kind of conversation.
Yeah, if I would just do an album of the year based on the albums that I've heard and the stuff that you've given me this year versus my normal hip hop intake, I would tell you that this is runner up for album of the year. And so pop culture's and rock and roll music's album of the year. And also too, there's something that's very folkish rock and roll to this album. Am I wrong for that? It feels like it has
No.
some bluegrass and folk influence to it.
You
Is that
have one of the things I love so much about it is it has a little bit of everything, right? Like
right?
the opening song is a cappella, like there's no instruments at all. It's just like the three of them standing around a mic singing, like you'd see in like your old timey bluegrass. Um, I think of it as like country gospel, so like bringing in the sheaves or down by the river to pray or will the circle be unbroken, that kind of stuff, and like they're all singing together and harmonizing. Um,
I, I definitely love the intro to this album because
so
for me, it's an appropriate setup and draw in to hear them harmonizing a cappella together. To
mhm.
come in, it has in hip hop terms, it kind of reminded me of Outkast beginning to Aquemini with "Hold On, Be Strong."
Okay. Tell me more about that. I don't know much about that opening.
It's literally just like a gospel hymn where they go, "Hold on,
Mhm.
be strong," and they just start harmonizing a little bit more. But right when they start to peak their harmonizing, it fades out. And so it kind of reminded me that in the sense of like you're like you know that you're it gives you the feeling that you're about to hear something great.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it. And so the first record gave me that feeling definitely is like, oh no, I'm like this shit's about to be dope.
Yeah. The you get I got the feel of the album with the first two songs because you have that a cappella quiet harmony where
And
they're
then it
kind of
goes
playing off each other, and then you got that guitar cranking in at the beginning. And that song has like screaming at the end. Like
so we have the same feelings about how they started off this album. To be honest, when I heard the first three records in succession, I was like, this is how you start off a dope ass album.
mhm,
You give people a little bit of everything to show who you are. So in the first three songs,
mhm.
you can hear all of their abilities, gifts, and traits. And
Yeah.
Missy Elliott said, a long time ago in an article that she did, like my mind is just like kind of like class some things down.
Mhm.
She Missy Elliott used to say the responsibility or the job of an artist is to bring you into their world, and the first three records do that appropriately and at a
Yeah.
high level. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell my creative writing class, shout out to Peter Parks. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate you, man. Um,
What did Peter
the,
say? Peter said something. What did he say on the super chat? Because I felt
he
like he
said the lyricism to this album is really great. It is
is.
very.
It
We're about
is.
to break some of that down too.
Yes.
Um, the so sorry guys, you're gonna have to get me used to hosting this too. It's going to take a little while to get my rhythm
Yeah,
with
I
this
can read.
too.
I can read the super chats if you like. Like
I
I
mean
can.
that would be helpful to me. I mean that would be um like in the other things that I've done when I did live streams and did Google Hangouts and that kind of thing. I hosted Twitter chats for the Flip Classroom movement on Twitter for 5 years probably. So that was kind of my role, but also this is a whole different
Yeah.
venue. So I'm learning and I'm out of practice too. So
No,
um,
that's. I'm in practice because of according to hip hop, so I have
yeah.
no problem with the super
All right.
chat.
Thanks, man. I just want to make sure that the people who are sending us super chats are getting recognized and um, feel our love for them. So thank
Yeah.
you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Um, so yeah, you were talking about the first three songs kind of setting the mood for the.
Yeah.
Oh, I do know what I was talking about. In my creative writing classes, what I'll talk about is we talk about in the writing context, but it works for music or painting or whatever. Like the true goal of any artist really should be to take their emotional state or an experience that they've had and try to transmit that to somebody else in a way that they can understand it too, right? It can be like an emotional thing that they're trying to transmit. It can be like an experience they're trying to transmit, but they're trying to move an experience from like you can't have the same experience that I can, and I can't have the same experience you can because I can't like live inside your head, right? But I should be able through your art to understand like kind of where you're coming from. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes. Yes. Very similar ethos to what Missy shared.
Right.
It's like.
Yeah, trying to echo what Missy said. Missy
Yeah.
is obviously a very, very smart lady. So we
I,
love Missy.
I don't throw the word genius around too often. She would qualify.
Absolutely without question. Yeah.
Yeah, she would definitely qualify, like on a few levels:
Hmm.
songwriting, production, videography, lyrically. Like, yeah. So I
And I've
love
read
the
some
way.
of that stuff that she's just written too. I mean, just like as a writer or whatever.
Yeah,
She's
no, no, no. As a writer, she might be the most underrated or unsung writer in Black music of her generation,
yeah.
because nobody really talks about her the way that they should, in terms of like, no, like she writes her shit and writes your shit better than you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's one of those. Not to get off too much the subject, but Shea Serrano's "Hip Hop and Other Things" book. The first essay in there is about Missy Elliott, um, and Super Duper Fly, because and for that very reason. Like, and um, there's lots of reasons for that, and I'm not going to steal his book. You guys should go read that book, "Hip Hop and Other Things" by Shea Serrano, if you have not. It's extraordinary. But um, one of the points that he makes is that she's one of the people when you hear the first like 3 seconds of a song that she makes, you instantly know that it's her. Like she's one of those people that is instantly recognizable, even from the beat, from the voice, from everything. Like the feel of the song is is Missy immediately.
So if you're telling me that this is these three ladies' first time really putting out a full length project together and they're all
Mhm.
solo artists,
Yeah,
that makes that's one of those intangible things that makes me appreciate this record more, because this record comes off like they have been doing this together for like the last 15, 20 years.
yeah. The harmony just sound like not. I don't use Jackson Five as a reference point, but they sound like siblings almost, right? Like siblings sound different. The Isley Brothers are another example of this. Like when they're harmonizing together, and I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's just the quality of people's voices or whatever, their accents, the way that I don't know, or genetics. But I've always thought that siblings that are harmonizing with each other sound not always better, but definitely different. They have a something that fits together better than um, non siblings. And these three ladies are not related, blood related, but they are
No,
very
I get what you're saying. That's what I mean. It's like, well, from the way they harmonize and do their runs with each other on these records, it's like, no, you would think that they like grew up together like sisters would, and have been doing this like for their whole career. So it's like,
yeah,
that's what I mean. Is it's like the actual execution of this album and the lyricism of this album, I
yeah,
believe, are what carry it over. I think my only quibble with this album is that I feel like the middle of the album,
mm,
sequencing wise, is a little too melodic for a listener who may not be familiar with them. And I feel like they should have maybe taken a record like Satanist or Anti Curse and moved it up to break up some of that melody and harmonization, because the middle of the album is where the lyrics and the writing is the strongest,
Yeah,
and it's allowed to come through. But sometimes people just want to party a little bit, and I feel
yeah,
like if they move Anti-Cursed or Satanist up a little bit and just broke it up a little bit,
yeah.
it would have made it a more enjoyable listen for somebody that's not as privy to them.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would balance it out. Like, I think they wanted to have some. This I obviously have no frame of reference for this. For me, I like having like some of those things spaced out evenly throughout the
Yes.
the piece, right?
Yep.
Um, and all the songs feel different. I mean, one of the hardest things to do really is to make an album where all the songs are good and independent pieces. They all sound good as independent pieces, but they also kind of fit together as a whole. Um, Lots of people can make albums full of singles, right? That are all good hits or whatever. But it's really hard to do that and have an album that all goes together, and it's especially hard to do it when all the songs sound so different.
Yes. So that is the part of this album where I think you can see, now that you've explained it to me, well, these are
Mm.
three solo artists. And so
Yeah,
that's, and I guess my popular culture contextualization is that it's like, oh, that's Paul's song, but everybody know how to sing it the way he wants it sung. Oh, that's John's song, but everybody knows how to sing it the way he wants it sung. No, that's George's song, but everybody
yeah.
knows how to come in behind, hit the respective song, and get the job done. That is a mark of greatness for a group, I believe.
Yeah. What has always felt to me, especially in many of these songs, and cool about it, and not strong enough. I mean, in several of the bigger sounding songs, it feels to me, whether it's true or not, it feels to me like one of them wrote a verse and kind of had the melody, verse, chorus, melody, whatever, and then the other two each wrote their own verse
Mm-hmm.
too,
Mm-hmm.
which which has a very hip hop ethos, I think. Like,
That's no, like I think, and I think that's part of what attracts me to this record. There is something like I can see the hip hop in this record as a whole, if that makes sense. It's like, oh no, it's a lot of high level lyricism going on. There's a lot of mixing and meshing of talents going on. As in, like this album, it doesn't feel like a bunch of guest appearances. It
right,
feels like, uh, the thing now, instead of being in a group, is to do a joint album. And so this has a joint
okay,
album feel that doesn't feel disjointed. And that's why I like it, because most joint albums in hip hop now, it's like they're not as good as they should be, because the artist is usually better off working alone. And so you'll find that there's jewels and gems on the album like that in the hip hop form, but it won't be to the highest level that you would expect from that artist as an individual. And maybe
right.
just not being as familiar with these ladies individually allows me to enjoy this record more too, because maybe their following might feel different, but I doubt it, because it's just hard to ignore how great this record is.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the there's a couple threads I could pull from that. Um, Lots of times on collaborative albums like this, or like the hip hop ones that you were discussing just now, um, it feels like each of them has their own songs, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a
Your
Julian song.
record.
This
Yeah.
is yours, and this is yours, and this is whatever. Even in the Beatles, like in the White Album, obviously, like you were just saying, basically that this is John's song, this is Paul's song, this is George's song. And Ringo gets one or two, right? I mean, like, and we let him have that. But um, no, seriously though, he's a great drummer. He is not, to say that he's not one of the great songwriters is not real. Not the greatest songwriter in the band is not really. You have like one of the best, one of the top 5 or 10, and one of the top 25. Like, all three of them are. So saying he's not on that level, that's not really a
Yeah.
slight on him.
Like
That's just,
it's like it's like being in the All Star game in the '80s, and you're like Charles Barkley when
yeah,
Isaiah, Mike, and Bird are there playing. It's like there's nothing wrong with being Barkley. It's
yeah.
just
You're
that's
just
Matt,
not that,
Larry, and Mike. So what are you gonna
and
do?
that's not shameful not to be Larry or Mike. Like, it's
Right. There's
like
nothing wrong.
nobody.
No, it's okay to be Barkley. I tell people
Yeah.
that all the time. It's totally okay to be Charles Barkley, like in musical terms, life terms. I mean, except for some of the political views, but it's another conversation.
No, that's different. That's a different conversation. Um, um, anyway, so I mean, the point of that coming back around is that even like White Album era, particularly Beatles, is that they all had their own songs or whatever,
Hmm.
and the people were kind of jumping in on those. These largely feel in the Boy Genius album like they were written together, like,
Yes,
um,
yes.
and so
So,
so like maybe somebody had like a little idea and was like playing on the guitar or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool," and they just kind of it does feel much more collaborative, I guess.
so to the Wu Tang reference on Enter the Wu Tang, there's two records that are solo records. That's Clan in the Front by the Jizza and Method Man by Method Man.
Hmm.
But the only other two records on there that feel like they belong to a certain person or persons is
Yep.
Shame on a Nigga, which is obviously Old Dirty Bastard's record.
Right.
But
Yes.
and Can It Be All So Simple with Ray and Ghost. It's like those two records feel like succinctly for them, but the rest of the album is so beautifully formed, group
Hmm.
wise, cohesively, that it feels like they're all in together on every record, even though there's about four records on a 12-track album that are really just like to highlight certain artists, you know?
Right. Yeah, and that's really hard to do. It's
It's
really hard
almost
to do.
impossible.
It's hard to do. We know it's hard to do because we've tried to do things with other people and work. Like we can speak to that from the artist perspective too,
Yeah.
but also, I mean, even if you know nothing about being in the studio yourself, you have to know that it's hard because it happens so infrequently, right? You see it done successfully, not very often at all, right? The rarity would indicate that it's very difficult to do
Oh no, it is. Like part of the reason why Enter the Wu Tang holds up so well, it's like, man, how did they get together and make that work? Like just the first
with that
album.
many people and that many talented people in one
Yeah,
room.
it's hard to do it with two, three, or four people, let alone
Mm.
eight, nine, 10.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's one of I mean, because here's the reality of the matter. We all as artists, whether we're retired, recovering, out of practice, out of habit, we're
yeah,
all still artists. So we're all a couple things: emotional as fuck and have an ego.
yep,
Period. And so that's why it's like the blending of this record makes you feel like they've been together forever. Because it's like
yeah.
you don't hear
It feels like sisters. It does.
I'm a star shit on this album, and you usually
Right.
get that great album too. Like there's you not to be funny, there's usually a David Ruffin or a Bobby Brown. There's always that one
Oh, oh, yeah.
motherfucker where it's like, well,
Or
you know,
Justin Timberlake, or yeah, sure. Like
yeah, or Justin Timberlake, absolutely. It's like he wasn't even the best singer in the group, but he was the
no,
star.
he's absolutely a star, and that's been borne out, right? Same with Bobby Brown. Same with David. I mean, like all the ones that you've
Yeah,
listed too.
we can go down the list of like all the people that have done it. Some people have crashed and burned off of it. Some people have achieved greater heights, but these three women have come together wonderfully on this project. I was super impressed by it. It was the type of thing. It's like, oh no, like some of the stuff that you give me, I can love it and I can appreciate it. But then,
Right.
in honesty, I know I'm not going to play it again. Probably
Yeah. Yeah.
this is not one of those things.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, this is one of those records. It's like, oh no, this is in rotation now.
Good. That's wonderful. No,
Yeah,
there are when I think of like album of the year things, I kind of put them in three tiers. Or when I'm listening to new stuff, either um, this is terrible. I'm not going to listen to this again. I can't even finish listening to it now. Um, like then this is fine. Like I appreciate it, but like I'm probably like you just said, I'm not probably not gonna listen to it again. Or I
yeah,
don't feel like compelled to listen to it again, particularly. I mean, if it comes on again, great, I'll listen to it. I'm not gonna like skip it or whatever, but it's not like something I'm gonna seek out necessarily very often. And then ones like this, which are I'm actively going to play it over and over and over again.
yeah.
And there were only two of those this year for me in the non hip hop space. So this was one.
What was the other one, if you don't mind?
The other one is by a South African lady named Alice Phoebe Lou, who that album is called Shelter. Well, maybe we'll do another show about that. I don't know, but it's much shorter. It's 8 songs, I think, 8 or 9, and it is I don't know. It's kind of it's a much more Joni Mitchell, Nora Jones kind of album.
So I'm glad you brought up Joni. I definitely felt that all three of these women are inspired by Joni Mitchell, but then
Yeah,
again,
they're
very
part of
few.
that lineage too, for sure.
No, they definitely are. But then I was thinking to myself, it's like, well, how many of these motherfuckers haven't been inspired by Joni Mitchell? There are hip hop artists inspired by Joni Mitchell. Prince
Yeah,
is,
she is one of the queens. Like she is one of the touchstones, along with the Beatles and stuff like she's one of the touchstones for just about everybody.
yeah. I was about to say, I definitely, in covering this with you, not to sidebar too far. I've always known who she was and appreciated her
Right,
greatness. But going through this process with you, it's like I hear her so much now in popular culture music.
it's
It's like
everywhere.
no, she's in that Beatles, Prince, Michael Jackson, Rolling Stones,
Mhm.
David Bowie type of stratosphere. She's on she's at the top. Like she's in the penthouse with all the other big dogs, quote
Mhm.
unquote. And you can hear it in, quite frankly, how many people have jocked pieces of her style. Imitation is the
Yeah,
best form of flattery, and I just hear her everywhere now when we're covering records like this. It's like
mhm.
some of these records in the middle where the lyricism is high and the melody is just strong. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, they definitely listened to her growing up too.
There she is again. Yep, there
It
she
is
is
again.
again.
Yeah. So
Yeah, she's a special, special artist. It was her birthday about a month ago too. So happy birthday, Joni. I know you're not seeing this, but happy birthday. Here,
you never
salute to
know.
you.
You never know.
Whatever. She is one of those people that I mean, she's I don't know how I don't know. It might have been her 80th birthday. Don't hold me to that. But in that range, and like you always want to celebrate people while they're still here too. Like you want
Absolutely.
I want to celebrate her forever for the rest of my life. But um, but if there's any chance that she or her fans hear this, we love you, Joni. Um, we appreciate you. And I think she's one of those people that never really got the same kind of flowers that she should have in her peak. I mean, people respected her as an artist, of course, but like people don't never talked about her as a lyricist, whatever. Like they talked about Paul Simon, or like they talked about Bob Dylan, or like they talked about, and she is every bit as good or better than
I
than that.
mean, from the music that I've heard and been privy to, she's better than both of those people you
Yeah,
just named.
I agree.
I think there's an almost, I would dare to say, slight gap between
She,
my
she is she is one of the greatest lyricists that's ever lived.
yeah,
Like
and I think, quite frankly, her being a woman had something to do with.
there's no question it does. And I mean, her not her apex, but like when she was coming up through his late 60s, early 70s alongside these
Yeah,
people. And like,
yeah.
but I mean, her albums like Blue, um, and Court and Spark and those kind of things, those are early 70s ish. And they're just
Blue, you put me on the Blue. That shit is phenomenal.
is an amazing, amazing record. It is one of the greatest albums that's ever been made.
I
I've listened to Court and Spark a lot more lately too, which is 1974, I think it is.
I need to
Um,
listen to that, but
Also very good.
I would echo your sentiments. Blue is one of the best records I've ever heard. Like, period,
Yeah,
point blank. Yep.
it is extraordinary. Not to diverge too much from Boy Genius,
Yeah, yeah,
but we are kind of talking about like their genealogy, right? Like their musical genealogy, where it's a
yeah.
lot of this coming from, um, and they're also pulling from um, more indie women artists to not just the folky ones, but the ones that are a little heavier. The I don't know, Patti Smiths and PJ Harveys and like Liz Phair's, like those kind of people as
Yeah.
well, who are a little more intense too.
Their rock and roll riffs to me on this album sound kind of U2-ish in the '80s.
Okay, tell me more
That
about that.
I mean, I just feel like you know, I'm not like the biggest U2 fan in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like everybody else. Joshua Tree is the shit. I know they've
Just
made it.
shit. And Achtung Baby too. Yeah.
I feel like YouTube does the type of rock and roll that is harmonious but not overzealous. And I feel like the rock and roll songs on here are more like that, like where they tap into that genre. It's like it's not an overzealous rock and roll, and they're not trying too hard to be rock and roll artists. There's an effortlessness
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was listening. My daughters and I went to go play tennis this morning just to mess around, and because the little ones are climbing the walls and they need to go outside. So we went and ran around the tennis court for a while this morning at my school, and so I played. I saw. a cover online earlier, like a couple days ago, of Crowded Houses, "Don't Dream It's Over," which is a really famous '80s song. And so I just let it play like the algorithm, whatever, from from that point. And um, one of the songs that played subsequently was U2's "Mysterious Ways," which is an Octane Baby early '90s song. You guys know that song, I assume. She
I,
moves in mysterious ways. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Okay. Um, and the U2 comparison that you're making here is not one that I would have thought of, but I'm taking that what you said and like cross-referencing it with what I've heard um on the Boy Genius album, and it's not distant.
yeah,
Like,
and
will you be a nihilist with me? I mean, that's very much in that
yeah,
kind of.
that's what I mean. Not like, not to be funny, not when they changed and got too big, but
Yeah.
before that when they were just like the biggest rock group on the planet, but still
Mhm.
like kind of like, I don't want to say humble about it because it makes it seem like they're arrogant, but just their '80s, early '90s shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's their. Most people think that's their apex. Like, and then they did like the next epoch of U2 is "Beautiful Day" and "All You Can't Leave Behind" and those kind of songs. And then they became a whole different thing when they put the album on the iPhones and stuff like that. They became like, oh, whatever. That's not the point of the story. But like, Boy, War, In the Name of Love, Joshua
yeah,
Tree, Octung
yeah,
Baby, like that's some seriously good stuff.
yeah,
And I can hear that um
yeah,
in this album, actually, now that you say it.
yeah.
It's quieter than that mostly,
It
but
is. That's what I mean about like the effortless nature of it. It's
mhm,
like they're not they're not overdoing it. They're not
right.
trying too hard, and they're kind of doing what they do well. You know what I mean? The songwriting is strong, the melodies are strong. It's catchy, but not like your normal kind of catchy,
Hmm.
which I always kind of felt about U2 when I was younger. I was like, well, it's catchy. It's just like not normal rock and roll kind of catchy. They were
Okay.
always like a little different for their time to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is also before I'm like privy to like the Beatles and Zeppelin and a lot of the
Right.
bands you put me on to as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're doing right here, is giving each other context for what we're hearing too,
yeah,
because you can't really judge albums of the year or judge new music that you hear, or even really decide if you like it, honestly, without a little background information, a little context, and a little like,
right.
yeah.
Do you have any critiques for this album? My critique would be the sequencing. That's the only thing that I could see. I could see the sequencing being a little bit better, but other than that,
Not
I mean,
really. I mean,
right? I can't speak like the vocally, bang, lyrically, bang, melodies, hooks, chords, harmonies, bang, 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 bang.
but this album has so many. I hesitate to call them bars because I don't know, people hear me weird like that, but there are
Here,
lots
bars.
of lyrics that like get stuck in my head on loop, and there's some savage ones too. They're
Oh,
not just like, but
yeah.
the poetry itself is great, but like there's some like, what did she just say? What?
I
Kind
mean,
yeah.
almost, I almost feel like the sadistic lyrics on here are the best ones.
Hmm.
But I mean, but that's what I mean is like, well, that's kind of hip hoppy, like
Yeah.
because usually in hip hop, what I hate to say it, it used to be what really made an MC stand out wasn't just it's like, oh, you could have the voice, you could have the delivery with the flow. It's if they said something that stuck to you. So
Yeah.
like let's go to Eminem on Dead Wrong. There's several different levels to devil worship and horses' heads, you know,
Hmm.
or uh, I mean, Biggie has so many that it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Biggie's got thousands. Yeah.
Uh, Nas's first verse that made him infamous was the line, "I went to hell for snuffing Jesus."
Hmm.
So there is a lot of that hip hop ethos in terms of where they're willing to take it lyrically that you don't often find in popular culture music. And so I think that's why me as a hip hop listener can appreciate this record. So it's like, no, the girls do have bars. They do, because it's like, as a hip hop listener, that was part of the draw. And I was like, oh, that's still how they put that together. It's
Yeah.
like,
We don't have to talk about it I could walk you home and practice method acting,
Yeah,
and pretend that being with you doesn't feel like drowning, and
right.
it's you're like,
Yes,
ooh, ooh, ooh.
yeah. It's
Tell
like
you that it's nice to see how good you're doing, even though we both know it isn't true. Like it's like,
you
God
want to
damn.
know what it is. You know what they have that like hip hop artists have?
Mm.
It's angst.
Is what?
Angst.
Okay, yeah.
There's angst to this album. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful angst, but that's part of what hip hop is.
Hmm.
It's explaining the inner city angst in a
Yeah,
beautiful manner. And some of the stuff in the process of explaining it is going to strike you and hit you hard.
yeah.
So that's what I mean. It's like, no, I can see a hip hop listener that maybe doesn't delve into this
Mhm.
form of music enjoying this album just because of that. Like, hip hop is always like, hey, run that back. What'd you say? Type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's like literally almost
Lots
on
of
every song, like almost on every song, there's a moment where you're like, hold on, slide
yeah,
that back 20 seconds.
yeah,
It used to be rewind that. Now it's slide that back, like on your
yeah.
phone. Just slide that
Right.
back
Got you.
20 seconds. Let me make sure she said that.
I'm gonna look this lyric up again because I want to make sure I'm quoting it correctly. The the idea of Revolution Zero, which is one of the great songs here on here too, is based on a White Album thing too. There's Revolution number 9 on there, so it's kind of a sort of
Oh,
the next one. But so it's there are several of these titles that are playing off of literary references. Letters
yeah.
to an Old is
Leonard
a reference
Cohen.
to a young poet, Rainer Maria Rilke. For example, I mean, there's lots of those kind of things on there too that make my literary heart happy too. But um, so I've been imaginary friends. You live up in my head, so I've been making music since you told me to do it. I just want to know who broke your nose, figure out where they live, so I can kick their teeth in. Like you're like, oh, this is a oh wait, no, this is not a sweet song. This is, and she says this. If you haven't heard this song before, in this, it's almost like whisper quiet
Yeah,
voice.
yeah. It's almost like she's creeping around the house,
Hmm.
like hoping that nobody hears her say it, but you hear what
Yeah,
she's saying.
I remember you listening to you and Mike D talk about putting great MCs in one room and talking about the quiet ones are the ones you should be scared of,
Yeah,
not like lyrically speaking should be scared of, and that has that feel too.
yeah, the quiet ones and the ones who are like, obviously standing out in the room. In hip hop terms, that would be Eminem, the person that would stand out in the room of all the great
Mhm.
MCs.
Right.
Well, he's white,
Yeah.
but like guys like Nas, Rakim, Black Thought, traditionally quiet guys.
Hmm.
Like they don't say a lot outside of their circles, and
Right.
so putting them in a room is a very dangerous proposition.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
all three of them are assassins on the mic. Like this. Like
yeah,
they're.
very much assassin like on the mic with the approach. Yes.
Mm.
But that's that quiet nature that like you have to be careful about when you're dealing with a high level writer.
Yeah.
Which back to Joni Mitchell has
Mhm.
that in spades as well.
Yeah. The tone of this album is very similar to that, to
Yeah,
the Blue, where we're they're creating worlds, right? They're creating world, and the Boy Genius's album does that too. They're creating worlds,
yeah,
and scenes. They're putting you in the car with them, and Emily, I'm sorry, they're putting you like sitting in the room on Not Strong Enough, where the band's spinning around the ceiling, and there. I mean, there's all of the, and they're going on car rides and. Um, what was that song? The one where they talk about Leonard Cohen doing horny poetry. Um, I forget what it's called. But your the language is fairly simple, but you are brought along for the ride in a way that not many artists can do, or
yes.
haven't done to me in a long time. So,
I agree. Like, I mean, so is this the best album you've heard in a few years, in your opinion?
if I'm being real about this, like I have not spent a lot of time listening to brand new stuff until this year, really.
Okay.
Um, and I've started getting into like going on YouTube Music or Spotify or Apple Music or whatever and listening to at least a little bit of the new, bless you, a little bit of the new releases. Like say, just flip through them, see if there's any artists I recognize, see if there's any like stuff that jumps out at me or whatever. Um, that's how I found the Alice Phoebe Lou one actually. Um, but most of them are just kind of like, okay, this is fine. Like, and there've been plenty of good ones this year, Mitski's and Sufjan Stevens and Wilco. I mean, there's a bunch of good ones, but not very many that draw me back to listen to
Yeah.
them over and over again. And this one
This album,
does
this
that.
album, because it's got guts.
Yeah,
Like they're artist. And I think, especially for artists, because I feel like once you're an artist, you're always an artist. As both of us being artists, we hear the guts that they have to make
Hmm.
these records, and we just appreciate it on a high level because it's like, oh no, this is like, it's not only is your musicality intact, but you're ballsy with it, you
Yeah,
know. And the fact that they're calling the band Boy Genius, I love it.
yeah. And there are three women, right? This,
Correct, but
but
it's almost like that's a little like tongue in cheek shot within
oh yeah,
itself, in my opinion too. Like, yeah, like we talk this shit better than the guys.
and they do. They're not wrong.
Straight straight up. I mean, I mean, when I was listening to this record, the only thing that I could even think of
Hmm.
was groups like U2 and the Beatles, like some of your best like songwriting groups, because that's how this album comes off lyrically to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's we've talked about this repeatedly in podcasts and stuff like that. You guys should go back and listen to those too. But it's very hard. Most artists are either excellent lyricists or excellent musicians, or like it's very hard to have all three or all four pieces of it that come together at one. Um, and there's artists that can do it that don't even do it on every album they make either. Like
I was about to say
they like hit, they have their moments where they hit, but they don't always aren't always able to get it back afterwards.
the hardest part is the execution.
Yeah.
The hardest part is the execution. So the way that they executed all these gifts, that's what I mean. It's like, oh no, the musicality high, the singing, the harmonizing, the melodies high, the lyrics like high. But
Mhm.
you know how many talented artists we have in this sphere that can't execute that in a song format? Like,
We talked about one of them last week. Sorry, I mean we did, right?
correct. I mean, and not saying that he can't,
Well, clearly he's capable of doing it, but
but we
like,
just any proof of the execution. And
yeah,
so it's like, it's like it's like this, it has to connect. You have to land the punch.
yeah,
You know, it's like part of why Muhammad Ali is the best boxer ever. Well, he has the best punch ever. His jab, because his
yeah,
jab
yeah. Pop,
hit
pop,
a
pop,
lot
pop.
of hit a lot of people a lot of times. Won him a lot of points. Won him a lot of fights because of that jab. It
Yeah,
wasn't just his mind. It was like, oh no, he literally connected,
yeah.
constant, consistently, boom, 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 boom,
Over and over and over and over and
over
over.
and over and over again. And that's part of the same thing that an artist has to do. It's like it has to connect.
Hmm.
You know, we just did a top 10 album list from the 2000s, from
Yeah,
2000 to
I thought.
2000, which I mean, I caught all types of flack from my list, but I'm used to it.
I thought your list was pretty good, but like I don't have the same context. Like I didn't grow up through that time, like listening to that stuff very closely. So like I don't really have a good opinion about it. I mean, I know 50s albums, like that's a pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But
it's
like,
literally doggy style, like
yeah,
I don't want
it's
to,
huge, huge, huge. Yeah, like
but
even
yeah, but oh god, I lost my train of thought that quick.
you were talking about the top 10 list, and um that you called a lot of crap for it, and
Oh
I
yeah,
said, okay.
so a lot of people got on me because I didn't have Jeezy's first album, Thug Motivation 101, on there.
Hmm.
And it was funny to me because, first of all, I'm a big fan of his and always have been, and still
Hmm.
am. His last album was great. I think it was one of the 10 best rap albums this year. It's probably gonna make my top 10 list.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a really good album. It's a nice comeback. But I realized when I didn't put it in the top 10, the way
Hmm.
people eviscerated me online, how much the album connected, even though he's not the best lyricist. Like, that album is not really lyrical at all, but
Hmm.
there's something about him and him on that album that so many people are connected to. And it was the number one record that I seen. It's like, you don't have TM 101 on your top 10, Coop? Like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? And it was like, it made me proud, as somebody, that was raised down here, Atlanta native, like, Charlotte and Atlanta are my homes and always have been. It made me proud that he had connected with so many people, even though it didn't make my top 10.
Yeah.
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 So,
One of the reasons this album connects, Boy Genius's album connects, I think, is that it's a coming of age thing. I don't know how old these ladies are. They're probably late 20s, early 30s, I'm guessing. And they are like not contemporaries of Taylor Swift, but they're like the same age bracket. Um, but one of the reasons that it connects, I think, with a lot of people is that it's a coming of age album, and a lot of the songs are about trying to figure out your place in the world, and a lot of the songs are about the relationships you go through trying to figure that out. I mean, all that kind of stuff, right? But they're not. I've heard so many songs that are just like stupid love songs. I don't want to be with him anymore kind of songs, but or with her anymore kind of songs. But these are they're that a little bit, but they're also like twisting that knife a little
Right.
bit. And it's also playing on because she actually says the age 27 in there a couple times. One of them does, and I mean that's obviously like the cutoff for a lot of great artists too. Like that's there's a history with the number 27, the age 27 in musical history that a lot of the greats don't make it past that point.
Right.
So it's a figure. If you want to think of that as a metaphor, you can think of it as like as a group together, we're figuring out how to like live beyond this or to push our art beyond that point. I noticed yesterday actually when I was making or the day before when I was making the graphics for this thing that the album covers all three of their hands up in the air, right?
Hmm.
Um, I noticed originally that two of them had like a tooth tattoo on,
Yeah.
but all three of them do. I think Julian Baker's is the one with the most, like all over her arm, but she's got one in there too. So all three of them have like a little, like uh, a sisterhood, I guess you would call it. I don't know what the meaning of that is. I don't know if anybody's ever asked them, but they definitely have matching ones, like right here on their wrist.
That's one of the first things that I noticed actually.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
I noticed that two of them did because the other two have pretty whatever, but I didn't notice the third one too.
so album of the year.
I think so. It's the best one that I've heard. Or let me say it like this: it's my favorite one for sure.
Yeah.
Like, um,
You said something when you said this is a coming of age album because then I realized it's like you want to know what like they're not just breaking up with their boyfriends. They're like bleaching the clothes and throwing them out the
I don't,
window
I
and
don't do
lighting
that.
and then lighting them on fire for the whole neighborhood to watch the man's clothes burn. But
Yeah,
there's something artistically that we're attracted to that type of stuff. It's like, no, don't give me your run of the mill, I love you, I hate you. It's like, no, there's got a little bit of like, fuck you, I'm gonna fuck your shit up. You're not the man that you thought you were, and I'm gonna go wait and exhale and light your clothes on fire inside the car.
yeah. All three of them would identify as gay or queer too. Like, so it's even an interesting extra twist that they're talking about women doing this too, like women making. So it's I don't want people to hear me say it's bad. It's unusual. It's not something that you would normally see. But even like even like lyrics from like "Move to Chicago," you were spinning out. If you don't know who you are, you fuck around and find out. And call
No,
rain, the water freezing in your eyes. You were happy, and I wasn't surprised. Like
that,
it's just like, oh, man.
so I'll tell you the truth. Somebody that's spends most of their time in Atlanta, which has arguably the largest
Hmm.
LBGQT population in the nation. So I have a lot of friends who
Yeah.
identify specifically as lesbian,
Hmm.
but also some queer as well, some trans, some non-binary, like all of
Yeah.
that. They all speak to me about the petty level of the relationships that they've been in. One of my
Okay.
One of my former girlfriends literally dated a famous rap artist for a time, and at night she would tell me like about all the petty shit that they did to each other, which I found to be on a personal level hilarious.
Yeah.
So actually, when you're bringing up the community that they belong to, it actually makes the songwriting and the music make more sense because it literally identifies with what my friends and exes have told me about how things operate in that space for that community.
Yeah. And it's been my experience or been my observation because I'm not around a lot of people that are of any gender persuasion that are that age in like their late 20s. That's not really but I am around a lot of people who are 15, 16, 17, 18, like in that age range that are um, still figuring all their stuff out, right?
Right.
Um, and the level of petty there is extraordinary as well.
It's a different type of petty. So it actually now the songwriting. Now that you said that, I'm like, oh, check
Yeah.
and more check because I have the real life stories from my friends in my former relationships to be like, oh no, that lines up. And quite frankly, all of my exes who have been on that side of the playing field, so to speak,
Hmm.
oh, they've all done crazy shit to me. Like completely crazy shit. I mean, just to be forthright, some of the trouble that I've been in with the law the past year has to do with, one of them doing some crazy shit to me, quite frankly, making it seem like I did things that I didn't do. And so, like, totally understand how the space operates more. And that's why I love having these conversations with you because it seems like during the course of our conversations and dialogue, we
Hmm.
somehow organically unpack these things. And it
Yeah.
even becomes, and then it really starts to piece itself together more. I know for people who are not familiar, Andrew and I have been doing this for a couple years now. We just really started going live with it. But one of the
Hmm.
beautiful things about our conversations is that, like, during the course of us talking about it for 30 minutes to an hour, we usually unpack things organically in a way that help develop the understanding.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That we want to the idea the one of the original ideas of the show years ago was um, that people from all musical spheres, from all walks of life, have similar-ish experiences, whether they grew up in the inner city or in the suburbs or in the country, whatever it may be. They may not have the same. They may not have the same experiences, but most people have the same like emotional experiences. They have breakups. They have bad relationships. They have happiness and sadness and anger and frustration and rage and like all of those things regardless of how they manifest themselves in your lives, they everybody has those feelings, right? Everybody has those things. And I think a lot of the best music, like this album that we're talking about today, Boy Genius is the record, they speak to that, right? Like the them being lesbian does not like define them, right? It's not. I mean, it's important because you care about them, but like you can appreciate this album if you didn't know that, right? That's not
Yeah.
like an important part of the understanding of the thing.
I just found out I could give two fucks. It just makes the album make more sense to me.
Yeah,
But the album is still the shit. Like, and I mean, I'm just one of those people, and I think it's the reason that my mother raised me
yeah.
to not
Shout
care
out, mom.
like that. That's why you and I have been able to be lifelong friends, even though I've been through, I mean, and you know this as well as anybody, I've been through a lot of racially driven, tenuous circumstances.
Yes, yes.
And, and I'm very, very pro black. I don't know if you remember this, our senior year of high school, like my friends were like, we're pretty certain when Coop leaves here, he's going to restart the Black Panther Party. Like, so it's one of those
I've seen
things.
people, according to hip hop, make jokes about that, not or in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. They
Well,
call,
yeah.
they call me
Wait, you
Coop.
got a white friend? Hold on. Yeah,
Yeah. First of all, they laugh when they find out they're like, you're pretty much my best friend. They're like, your best friend's a white guy. I'm like, yeah, my mother didn't
yeah.
raise me like
It's
this.
it's
Like,
it's it's
yeah,
years and years, man. Like
yeah,
it's just
but yeah, they call me Koopavelli, Kupak, like all those things.
yeah,
I think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious, by the way. But my mother did raise me with a sense of not giving a fuck about stuff like that and just accepting good people for who they are.
right.
I think the only time that it becomes tenuous for me is because of the faith that I have. But
Mm,
I'll even tell you something to that. Like I have one of the liquor reps for my job.
hmm.
She's a lesbian. Like she's married to another woman, and she and I were talking. Because she wasn't raised Baptist, but she was pretty much raised Protestant. And
Yeah,
oh, I'm like, same tree, different branch. And she and I were pretty much like reciting scriptures back and forth about things that Jesus said in the New Testament about, the order of life as it's explained in the Old Testament. And it's like, oh no, you have to understand that, although some things are frowned upon in terms of the context of the Bible, there's a large portion of that community that was raised in that community and know it very well and are very well versed in it,
yeah,
And
mm,
so it's like I didn't see a lesbian woman giving me scriptures. I saw somebody who, quite frankly, knew the Bible than most straight people that I fucking know,
yeah, mm,
who call themselves religious and have a problem with people like her and can't quote scripture like her. That's the tenuous part of it, but outside of that, I don't care.
So that's the, not to make this a religious thing, but
That's
that's the take care of the log in your own eye before you worry about the splinter in somebody else's kind of thing, right? That's
yeah,
the worry about your own house, guys. Worry about your own house, right? And your own self, not just your own house.
right.
But yeah, this is. I mean, Magic 3 is the only other album. I mean, I love Magic 2, honestly, personally, but that's my
You said
personal thing.
you said that.
Um, but um, but like I understand why Magic 3 is like it's got more like hits. I don't
I
use
think
hits.
I think maybe we should end the year with a comparative analysis of the two albums, maybe because I
I'm
think
good with that.
they are clearly to me based on the stuff that you've given me this year and the stuff that I've heard myself. I
Hmm.
think they are the best albums this year in their respective class. So it would be good to put them together and clash
Hmm.
and
We should
kind of
we should at some point, especially if we can do it over Christmas break, because I'll be out of school starting the 21st, I think. So maybe after Christmas sometime. I don't know what your schedule is, but we can do a station head where we actually listen to some of it too.
yeah,
Um, and then like actually come on here and talk about it as
yeah.
well.
I would
But
like that. We can do a maybe like do a station head where we go back and forth with some of the songs
yeah,
and you know, get on here and talk about it more. Oh, last thing, because I know it's about time for us to go, because I know I have to go in a minute.
yeah.
This album is concise the way I like albums to be concise, Andrew.
Hmm.
I hate me a long ass bullshit player with a bunch of stuff that I don't like quite. It's like,
Yeah,
no, like give me the fucking goods. I need 11 to 15 songs from you.
yeah.
I don't need anything else. In the 15, it's like, I'm not even gonna lie, it's like I have to love you
Yeah.
to want the
Even
15.
I do, like, and I have some patience for that stuff. Like we've this is a sidebar, but like I've been doing Grateful Dead reactions too, and some of those are like long ass jams and long ass songs. But
8 minutes, ridiculously long.
but one of the things that I'm learning in that space, but from the people who are commenting as well, just like I'm learning from you in the hip hop space, that um, they're teaching me how to listen, right? Like they're teaching me what to listen for, and so much of appreciating Boy Genius and so much of appreciating Nas and so much of appreciating the Grateful Dead, so much of appreciating a lot of these things is learning how to listen to it and knowing what to listen for, and being able to put words. This is kind of what we're doing, right? Being able to put words to what we're hearing, because that allows us to have like a frame of reference for it too. But yeah, this is a no filler. The Boy Genius album is a no filler album at all. Like they're all it's all necessary.
Yeah.
I remember one of the things that, this is another sidebar, sorry, but I remember one of the things you told me about Donda when that came out was that if you just took the best 10 songs on there, it would be classic or classic adjacent. It would be very, very good. But there were what, like 25 or 30? Like
I
I
literally
don't know how many there are. Way more than there needed to be, is what you said.
I feel like there's 28, 29 songs on there, and I'm
Yeah,
like, nah, fam, there's 13 great songs though. How about you just give me the 13 other great songs? Why don't you just give me
yeah,
the 13 great songs? You
yeah.
know, but that's that artist ego too. It's like, oh no, all these songs are great. It's like, no, no, they're not. And
It
people,
is very, very, very difficult to make a double album length thing where all of them are necessary. That's very, very hard to do.
that's what I mean. It'd be funny. It's like Tupac, Biggie, and Wu Tang couldn't do it, and neither can you.
Yeah, and Wu Tang was doing it with like nine people, right? Like they're doing it with not just you or not just one person. Now this album feels kind of more in the vein of like Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. Is that kind of where they're all like
Yes,
bang one and after
yes.
the other, the
It's
other, the other
it,
after the other.
it's not as good as Rumors, but
No,
I
definitely. Rumors is
definitely.
the greatest albums that's ever been made. But like it's in that kind of like
Yeah.
lane, so to
I mean,
speak.
if I was just thinking off the top of my head, Rumors is one of the 15 greatest albums I've ever heard
Yeah.
in any genre of music. Yeah, like I put that album
It
up.
belongs on that list for sure.
Yeah, like that's that's where every song on there is a fucking hit and a
Yeah.
classic.
Every single one. Every single one.
And it's cohesive too. That's the beautiful part about it. It's like, damn, these are all home runs, and these are home runs that are lined up perfectly together. You know what I
They're
mean?
they're an argument, right? Like I mean, literally, they're an argument between the people in the band. Not to get too
Yeah.
far off topic, but like it's like Lindsay saying this to Stevie and Stevie saying this back to Lindsay, and they're just going back and forth and back
Yes.
and forth. Fuck you,
But
no
it's
fuck you, no fuck you. Like it's that like
beautifully petty, and masterfully put
which is
together.
exactly what we're talking about with the Boy Genius album. Is beautifully petty, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and there's moments that are like silly, and there are moments that are like they're not all angry, right? They're not all vicious. Also they're also like making fun a little bit too. There's a sense of humor about some of them too, and not just
No, like
it wouldn't come off the same way, and it wouldn't come off the same amount well. I don't think if if it was all angry the
right.
whole
No, that's what I mean. That's what Biggie was great
that
at. That's
balance.
it felt Biggie like to me because it's like, oh no, it's wicked genius. It's intentional. It's supposed to make you be like, ooh, but kind of make you laugh at the same time.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
supposed to do that to you. Yeah, that was the first beautiful thing that I heard about. I was like, oh yeah. It's like this got Biggie Smalls all over it. Just that we would call it evil genius, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, evil genius to it where it's like, oh no, it's wicked, but it makes me laugh too. It
Hmm.
kind of brings out our own personal darker sides when they speak in these manners, you know?
Yeah.
Makes us realize it's like, oh no, 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 we kind of got some savage tendencies because I kind of like your savage tendencies.
Yeah. You're. Yeah. It gives, and it also gives vent to that a little bit,
Yeah,
right? Like then I don't have to punch anybody's teeth in. Like I can
right.
hear you.
Like right. That's very similar. Like when Biggie's on "Give Me Luke" talking about "Give Me the Baby Rings" and the number one mom pendant. It's like, hold on. It's like he can't be serious. It's like he's not serious, and then it's like he might be serious, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. All right, I
The,
got a slide.
all right. I'll say one more thing too, like because it ends. The last example of that, the album ends with it's is the second verse. You're not special, you're evil. You don't get to tell me to calm down. This is exactly the same kind of verse. You made me feel like an equal, but I'm better than you, and you should know that by now. When you fell down the stairs, it looked like it hurt, and I wasn't sorry. I should have left you there with your hostages, my heart and my car keys. That's like, whew,
I
ooh,
left there with those hostages.
like don't should have left you. And that's, and I mean the context of the song. That's like when they realize it's really over. When you see somebody fall, and you're like,
And that's
right,
just better. And that's just better than saying I should have left you a long time ago. It's just better.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah. Because that make again coming full circle in the stream, like that's it makes you feel it like oh, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thanks guys, thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate the donations, appreciate you hanging out, appreciate all of the support. Long may it continue. We'll be back here next week. We have not discussed exactly what we're going to discuss. I assume we'll do a hip hop album next week. But we'll have to talk behind the scenes about which one we're going to
Yeah.
get into, and we'll do the comparison that we're talking about between Magic 3 and this album, and a couple 2 or 3 weeks too.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Take care, y'all. Be good. Thanks, guys. You have a great weekend too.
Thanks, Bugs.
Yep. Appreciate it.